Go. So we are live. There we go. So now everyone can see and hear us.
Hey, everybody.
Perfect. Yeah, so as everyone can see, this is Nick. This is the guy that I've been talking about for quite a wee while. I've been really excited to talk to you because I know there's a lot that's been going on your side. You've definitely been through it, and I'm excited to tell your story. Well, I'm excited for you to tell your story. So anyone that doesn't already know, Nick is a former Navy SEAL. He did that for 10 years, and then he went on and did even more stuff outside of the Navy SEALs. But I know there's a lot of people on that want to know a lot about the Navy SEAL part of your life before we start moving forward. So, Nick, do you want to tell us what age did you get involved with the Navy SEALs? Like, when did you start wanting to become a Navy SEAL?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, it was early. So growing up, I moved every few years, but had a really close group of friends in Tucson, Arizona. And two of the guys were brothers. We wrestled together. We were, athletes. And two of the guys were brothers, just inseparable. And the older brother, who at the time I was always a little bit afraid of, a really tough guy, a few years older, phenomenal wrestler. It was his idea. He started talking about it, and at first I thought it was funny. But then I got into the movies, and back then there wasn't much about it. It was kind of a speakeasy. Special forces were definitely the most famous American soft unit. Coming off of Rambo and all that. So, it was not many people knew what it was. So when I immersed myself in it, I was really attracted to the jack of all trades. The water aspect of it. It was really encouraging. So 12 years old, I think,
Damn.
is when that happened. And then me and the younger brother ended up going out to the center where they train at 13 or 14. And I still have a picture of, but I don't think I can get to it, but me and a buddy standing in front of SEAL Team 5, just smiling. So yeah, it's funny. There's a couple of things that when I was really young, I knew I was going to do them, and I checked a lot of those boxes and kind of stayed consistent with it. So I'm fortunate. So had the older brother not brought it up, my life would have looked much different.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. So one of the things that I was really like, I already read your book, and like I'm really excited for others to be able to read the same thing. But can you tell the story about the tattoo, because it made me chuckle, and I know that a lot of people, because I've already kind of put word out about. I was like, there's a tattoo story that everyone needs to hear. So can you tell the story about the tattoo, because I think it's fascinating.
Well, everyone remembers their first, right? This was my first tattoo. Yeah, so when it was, I think, March 2003, those two brothers actually we all made it, which is strange that we all made it through the training.
Right.
They were already going to their first platoon, and they were involved. So when the war kicked off in Iraq, I felt, that it'd be a good time to get involved. So, dropped out of college at the time. I was at Ole Miss, 2 years in. So I dropped out, joined the Navy, and for all the right reasons, just wanted to be with my brothers. And when I got to the recruiter office, I think that maybe I didn't look like the ideal candidate. One thing that the viewers can't probably see is how short I am. I'm only like, I say 5'5". I say 5'5". But that's with like platforms,
Right.
I'm a little guy, and I think, maybe that freshman 15 too could have been a little pudgy around the waist. So I walked in, the recruiters were like, okay, this is not a SEAL candidate. So, they didn't get it, right? They didn't see it. So they talked me into a job, and I think they have some wickets that they have to hit, maybe some hard fill positions and stuff like that, right? They're incentivized. So they put me into a job that was working on helicopters and this and that, and told me that I could screen for the SEAL program when I got to boot camp.
Right.
So I was excited. It seemed like a good deal. The training, which I would have to go through regardless, was on helicopters, which sounded fun. So when I left the office and called my buddies, they told me that I'd been duped. You have to have it in your contract going in. At the time, things have changed a little bit, but that's still true. You have to have it in your contract, and I had straight up been duped. So went back in, told them I knew what they knew, that I wasn't going to do it. And they have you sign like a piece of paper up front to hold against you, which actually doesn't have much legal weight. But I said, no, you have to come in and do this. It's over now. And we went back and forth. I was arguing with them, and it came down to the point I said, hey, I'm not doing that. Like, if you're going to get me, it's going to be on my terms.
Yeah.
And there was still so much pushback. So I decided to become an expert on the matter. And what I learned was that there are some rules that you can't ship out to boot camp if certain things are true. And one of those is that you couldn't have a tattoo
Right.
within, I think it was something like a month. It's been a long time. It was longer than you would think. So anybody who has a tattoo might say, well, 2 weeks would make sense,
Right.
But did it the night before, showed up and said, hey, you can't send me anywhere. We got to redo this contract. And
I want to know.
They were happy to do it. I ended up, my buddies.
When you were having the tattoo done, were you like nervous, or were you like chuckling to yourself? Like, what was going through your head when you were getting that tattoo done?
It was a mix of all those emotions. I remember being really nervous that it wouldn't work.
Could you imagine?
Just getting the first tattoo. I mean, it's a bold move, right? Like,
yeah.
If it didn't work, well, I have a tattoo now. So, but it was on Beale Street in Memphis, which was pretty cool. It was kind of an eclectic place. So.
And is it a large tattoo?
It worked, and from then on, I had my friends talking to the recruiter, and I learned a valuable lesson. Then I learned that not everyone's going to get it. If somebody doesn't believe in you, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't do it. It just means you can't do it with them.
Yeah.
And some really valuable lessons. I knew what I wanted. Somebody was going to stand in my way because they were incentivized to do so, and I refused to let that dictate my course moving forward. So I look back, and it's one of those moments that I'm really proud of myself, and how I handled that, especially at such a young age. That's when we make our mistakes.
How old were you at the time?
What I believe to be true, the path would have been much different, right? So.
And how old were you?
I was, 21 maybe.
Wow. 21, so 22. You're still young. You're still young. Yeah, I've not got any tattoos. It makes me nervous.
I highly recommend it. And it's true what they say about being addictive. Now I have tattoos everywhere, but.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, it's got. So here's So obviously you go in and you're like, right, I'm going to be a Navy SEAL now. That process is done. Now, from a civilian standpoint, I've obviously never even attempted to try and get into the military, and I know most people hadn't. But I'm very curious. I think I'm the same as everyone else that's been on YouTube, and we've looked at Navy SEAL training, and we're like, is it really that hard? Is it really that bad? Like, from what we see on the YouTube videos, is it really... I don't know if you've ever seen the videos before, but is it anything as difficult as what they make it look inside the videos, or is that like dramatized?
So they came out, Discovery Channel came out with a set of videos for class 2, 3, 4 back in right around 2001.
Right.
And I had seen those before coming in. Now there's been so many shows, I haven't watched any of it.
Right.
Once you're in it, you know how it is.
Yeah. Oh.
2, I remember thinking, yep, this is as advertised.
Really?
This is every bit as hard as they said it would be. Oh yeah, it was intense, man, because not only, I mean, every week you're evaluated. The whole don't quit thing is huge, but there's more to it than that. I mean, you have to pass a 2-mile ocean swim every single week.
Every week?
No you're just guiding based off pulling your head out of the water, looking and continuing swimming. So, you're not swimming a straight line. It was really challenging. In fact, swims almost got me kicked out of the program, passing those times. It was so hard, and living with that weight over your head. In addition to that, there's 4-mile timed runs, and sometimes if the tide comes in, you're running in soft sand, and you're still, there's a standard, and you have to meet that standard, no ifs, ands, or buts. And then an obstacle course, and all 3 of those were timed every single week, in addition,
okay.
In addition to everything else. And so the burden is tremendous.
Yeah.
And then there's other times where you're not being evaluated on your time or your performance. You're just sitting there freezing cold water, shaking, stuff in your head.
Yeah.
And so they hit you on so many fronts. They're going to find something that you're weak at and just exploit it. And I love that they do it. I think it's brilliant. I had one moment in Hell Week, and for anyone who doesn't understand what Hell Week is, it's crazy, man. It's from Sunday night until Friday afternoon. You sleep for 2 hours on Thursday, 2 hours or was that 2 hours on Wednesday, 2 hours on Thursday. So a total of 4 hours. And they just do that to mess with you. So
Right.
letting you go to sleep for a second and then waking you up is not pleasant. And then you put on somewhere around 200 miles. Most of it is with a heavy boat on your head. And I was stuck with all the short guys, the Smurf crew. Jolly group of guys, but we were not high performers. We didn't win any races.
Right.
No medals were given out for us.
Right.
But I remember on Monday night of Hell Week, so we'd been at this thing for 24 hours, and it was just kind of a punch in the face, because you realize they've done this for another 4 days, and it gets to you a little bit. Monday night is when a lot of people start quitting. And there was one guy in my class that I'll never forget who was a star performer. He competed at a very high level, just a rock star. And not only that, but he was really nice. He was kind, open door policy. He would spend time with anyone, no matter how unlikely, just total package kind of guy. Brilliant. Just he had everything going for him, and he was a pillar of strength for my class. And I'll never forget on Monday, just getting surf tortured. We're sitting there in the water, locked arms, sun's going down. We know it's going to be a long, cold night, just miserable, And I remember looking at the sun going down. Just it struck me as being so beautiful, and I was somewhere that I'd wanted to be for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I was finally there. I could smell it. I could feel it. I was so thankful to have gotten there, especially since it had already been challenging. Just getting there was hard.
Yeah.
So I heard these murmurs coming down the line, and this, former Olympian athlete had stood up and was walking towards the bell. And in our training, there's always a big bell, and if somebody rings that bell, it's just telling the entire group, the entire team, class that you're quitting.
Oh, damn.
And he was that bell. Yeah, and people started just talking. I walked up, rang it. After that happened, everybody turned their head, and I think probably between 10 and 15 people stood up and stood in line. There was a line.
Damn, really?
People couldn't ring it fast enough.
Yo, that's crazy.
Yeah, they lost a pillar of strength, and that's what was holding it together for them, and they started quitting. I think that's when I realized what I was in it for, and what this was about. What's interesting is guy thinking in his head, what was going on? He was a phenomenal athlete. He could outperform class, but he finally found something that he couldn't outrun.
Yeah.
The cold water, and he just had to sit there and suffer, and that's something that he wasn't. And I think the other guys were looking at. They were miserable. They wanted a reason, and he provided them a reason, and that's all they needed to tip away and decide to quit. Me, on the other hand, and it's hard for me to be self-promoting and to speak well of myself, just because of the community that I'm in is really humble with each other. But I will say, just to be completely honest, in that moment, I felt more powerful than I've ever felt before in my life.
Because you're still going.
I'm looking at this guy who was a shoot, and everybody thought that he was good to go, and I'm watching him quit. And here am I, little Nicky, sitting in the surf zone, thinking about how beautiful the sunset is, laughing. I felt so powerful in that moment. And you got to think about where we were at in our heads, the three different groups in that story. And the guys who were like me, who were really appreciative, could look at the demon and laugh. Everything was funny. I mean, the worse it got, the funnier the jokes became.
Yeah.
That's the person that tends to make it through stressful environments like Hell Week.
Yeah, see, that's a crazy situation. And I think that if you're seeing someone that you consider superior quitting, it's kind of like, well, I mean, if that guy's gone, what chance have I got? But you kind of did the opposite. You're like, well, he's quitting, but I'm still going. Look at this. So you kind of did it the other way around. Whereas I think a lot of people were dependent on seeing him succeed, and that was their motivation. So I think they had their motivation set on the wrong thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. Their focus was definitely on the wrong thing. It's kind of a popular phrase is, your thoughts are going to become beliefs, beliefs are going to become actions, and your actions are going to eventually become habits. And it all starts with thoughts. And yeah, it was a battle of the mind that entire week. It was a battle of the mind. And unfortunately, some people lose that battle. When you're coming up, when you're coming up on Hell Week, a lot of young men say that they'll die before they quit, and I think they get um, some of their security comes from being able to convince other people around them that
Right,
they're
right.
they're right for the job, right? And what's interesting is most people who would say that they would die before they quit just happen to change their mind on
Yeah,
Monday or
yeah.
Tuesday. It's that easy to change your mind,
See, it's a funny thing you say
and
that.
that's
So
that's where the
in
battle is for sure.
one thing that I learned was there's a phrase in Russia, and it says you can say something 1,000 times, but it's not the same as living through it once. And I thought that was a fantastic phrase, and I've ever since I've heard that, it stuck with me because it's wrong true for everything. When like my company, I've got a company called Anything for Success, and it's because I'm more than happy to stay awake like 24 hours a day if I need to get something done. Like I'll do whatever I need to do, right? And it's something that I'd done and I'd always done, and then I didn't realize that it was a common thing around high performance people, which I personally feel that you must be high performance because you managed to get through all the Navy SEAL training without breaking, which it says something about your mindset. And what was funny to me was, I don't know if you're aware of this, but you have a chapter in your book that's called Whatever It Takes, which is actually a very common phrase used by high performance people. And it's also, there's a guy that's very famous in the online industry called Grant Cardone. He just recently became a billionaire. And but he'd been saying since he was just at a couple million, he was saying whatever it takes, and that's he's literally trademarked the phrase whatever it takes. So I thought it was funny that you used that as a part of your book, and I was like, I wonder if he knows how relevant and how common that phrase is with high performance people.
Yeah, that's what's funny about. There's a few elements of the book that there's some. I stay away from buzzwords, but there's some elements that are really, really common in, like you said, high performance people. And I feel like it's almost the tricks of the trade
Mm.
that I'm trying to show people. That's okay that they're common. It's a good deal. But when it comes to doing whatever it takes, it's interesting because first, like, you have to be able to take aim. You have to know what you're shooting for. And there's ways to vet that and make sure that you're on the right course.
Right.
So it doesn't mean just reckless abandon, head through a brick wall, right? There's a considerable amount of planning and then making adjustments. We have a saying, adapt and overcome. You're going
Right.
to have to continually adapt to your environment. So it's not that kind of stubborn. It's just knowing that at the end of the day, if you work harder than the people around you, if you surround yourself with brilliant people, and you're consistent day in and day out, it's going to work.
Yeah.
It's going to work. Everyone else is going to give up. Not a lot of work ethic out there these days. If you just stick with it, it's going to work. It might take longer. It will take longer than you expected to at the beginning, but stay the course. So how that chapter happened too, because that's the final chapter of the book, and I had written it when I had beta readers going through the book, and I had a couple of close friends who know me pretty well. One of them hit me up. He's actually an undergrad at Columbia right now, and he said, "Brilliant guy." And we'd done a couple platoons together, contracted in the Middle East together, so he knows me really well.
Mm.
And he called me out, and he said, "Nick, I feel like you're lying to people, well, in the sense that you're telling a half truth.
Mm.
You're giving them these structures that they can put into their lives, and it's all good stuff. But I feel like there's an element of you that's not in the book.
Right.
That hard charging, whatever it's going to take. No, don't take no for an answer. Just bust through the wall mindset." And that really cut me to the quick. And he was right.
Mm.
That's where that came from was, hey, at the end of this book, we have to discuss this X factor. You can do all the right things. You can be disciplined. You can add these structures. You can put yourself in the right room. you can have the right daily routine to become a great leader, but at the end of the day, there's something else. There's this thing.
Yeah.
There's this inspiration, and that's how I wanted to close the book with. At the end of the day, you're going to have to go out there and get it done. Period.
So
There's no magic pill. There's no microwave. Easy answer. It's going to be a grind, and you have to hit that grind with everything that you have to. You're going to have barriers. You're going to have barricades, but ultimately, there's a couple ways you can deal with them. You might just be able to go over it. You might find a workaround. You might be able to go over it or just smash right through it. Either way, it's not going to dictate your course.
So it's funny that you say that, because I've spoken to a lot of people that have been very successful, and they all kind of say the same thing. And I'm curious, because it's funny. So I come from a poor background, and then, like, lo and behold, I did very well. But when I was broke, the weird thing was I would always listen to people with money, right? And I would say, oh, they always say the same thing. And I just thought it was like they were just like copying and pasting each other. Like they were just regurgitating the same stuff. But then later on, I realized, like, oh, no, actually, that is the thing I should be listening to. But I'm curious if you think it's something that you're born with, or do you think it's something that you can develop? And if you think it's something you can develop, how could you develop it?
As far as, there's better people to ask what the DNA does, and how much that has to play. But personally, I believe that it's something that's born of struggle. No one's born with biceps, right? No one's born with like rippling abs.
Well, clearly, I mean, look at me.
It takes work.
Yeah.
If you work out, if you put the muscle under stress, then it's going to respond to that stress by growing and preparing itself, and you're going to become a better product. So when people allow themselves to be uncomfortable, I guess if they become comfortable being uncomfortable,
yeah,
then it's essentially a workout, and you can do that with the mind, and people who have had to overcome adversity like yourself are going to key in on certain aspects of that. And that's not something you're born with. It's something that you absolutely develop. I think about the fact that a lot of us say similar things. It's fun to see how many different backgrounds of people that you can have that are high performers, who are performing in different sectors, different industries, different sports, and how common the mindset is. Like, I love that. You could be talking to a bobsled team, or you could be, talking to a tech and a project manager and his team, and they're going to say the same things. They're going to place a high value on communication. They're going to talk about empowerment and how you have to let people run,
Yeah.
That you would rather, my horse background is going to come out here, but, if you're choosing a horse, you'd rather need a bridle than a whip.
Yeah.
Right. Certain elements like that. It's interesting because to me, it's like gravity. It's going to work in the UK. It's going to work in the States. It's going to work in South Africa. It's gravity. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And we're just kind of keying in on it. So yeah, it's almost like physics. You just can't outrun it, and it's going to work no matter where you are.
Okay, cool. And so I've got, just to kind of jump around a little bit, I've got two questions that I've got to throw out there from the viewers. One is, what's your class number? And then someone else asked, where did you serve?
Yeah, so class number was 255 is who I graduated with. I rolled into that class because I was a terrible swimmer, which is a funny story in and of itself. But as far as where I served, that's one of those things that I'm fortunate to have served, and I served with some amazing people, and out of respect for them, I like to
yeah, for sure,
be discreet. So
no, it's not.
Yeah, I've been to a few places. The Middle East is one of them. But yeah, it's funny. Like in the teams, we have a saying, "Silent professional," right? And the idea is that you're not going to find your confidence from bragging, and I like that saying. Of course, I'm not going to be silent. That can't happen. I'm not capable of that, but I can certainly be a quiet professional. I can be a discreet professional. And
for sure.
I think that's the best way to honor my brothers that are still there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so here's something that I wanted to ask. So from obviously being in the Navy SEALs and then going into business, What do you feel was the most beneficial, like skills that you developed being a Navy SEAL that you took into business? Like, what was the most beneficial thing that you transferred?
Yeah, if we're saying the most beneficial thing, then because there's so many elements. I mean, part of what I do now as a consultant is taking those elements that make us such a high performing team and inject those into different organizations, right?
Right.
So I took a tremendous amount of wisdom from the SEAL teams and how a team should function, how you have to be serving something bigger than yourself, and what brotherhood really looks like. So I would say the most important thing, though, is the value of mentorship. I had a phenomenal mentor when I was a new guy. And I'll tell you right now, I was a little cocky at that point. I think everybody is once they make it through training.
Right.
And I thought I had it all figured out. And I remember being like a minute or two late for a morning meeting with my platoon. And my platoon chief, Jim, who just a remarkable guy, made a joke about it and said, hey, like, thanks for showing up, kind of thing. And once the meeting was over, he said, hey, Nick, can you stay behind? He told me, he said, hey, not a big deal. You were obviously a couple minutes late, so you got to pay the man. So if you don't mind, go throw 50 pounds into a rucksack, which is military speak for like backpack,
All right.
and run up the parallel tower one time for every guy in the platoon. And it was like a 5-story building, and we had a lot of the platoon. So I thought he was kidding at first. It actually sounded like a joke. But I went downstairs and I was like, all right, if he's gonna see how far I'll take it, then no worries. And I did it, threw 50 pounds into a rucksack and started walking the parallel tower. But he knew what I was doing, and he came downstairs. He said, Nick, you can't do it right now, man. It's 10 in the morning. That's not even a punishment. You have to do it after work.
Oh, damn.
So, yeah, that pissed me off. So I put down the rucksack, and it was a long day of work. At a night dive. I mean, it was late when we got done with it. I don't remember the exact time. And I went and took care of all my gear. There's still a lot of work to do when you're done. Once that was concluded, I grabbed the rucksack and I started walking over to the parallel tower. It was raining too at the time. I mean, just insult to injury, you know?
Yeah, just throw that in.
And I'm walking over there and I see my chief, Jim, standing next to the parallel tower, which just infuriated me because I thought maybe he didn't believe me that I would do it. Maybe he was going to weigh my rucksack because he didn't think it had enough weight in it.
Oh, wow.
I was so mad, and I was about ready to start talking to him when I saw that he had a rucksack next to his feet. And when I walked up, he threw the rucksack on. He was like, "You ready? Let's hit this thing."
Oh, wow.
He told me, yeah, he told me that he was the leader, and my failures are his failures. He was going to share in my failures as well as my successes.
Damn.
Grabbed his rucksack, threw it on his back, started climbing stairs. That's the only thing he said about it. He never brought it up again. He didn't give me a hard time. He didn't shame me in any way. We just hit flight after flight of stairs. We talked about God, family, the rest of it. And it was actually fun. And, you know, what he did in that moment was he grabbed me and said, hey, you're mine, dude. You know, he didn't actually care about me being, I could be like, yeah, it's back off, plus or minus a minute. This was him grabbing me and saying, you're mine, dude. Like, we're going to do this. And he became my mentor in that. He was already my leader, but he became my mentor.
Right.
It's different. I started looking at the way he was, you know, developing his body armor and everything else, and where he was carrying stuff, how his gun looked. Everything about him as an operator, I mimicked. Right. And what I learned is the value of mitigating learning curve cost. The guy had 7 platoons. He learned a thing or two. If I wanted to go through and make my own decisions and learn my own lessons through 7 platoons, then I would get where he was at.
Yeah.
Or I could just listen to the guy, emulate the guy, and then save a lot of that cost. You're still going to make mistakes, but you're mitigating the cost that it takes to learn properly.
Yeah.
And I did 2 platoons with him. We're still really close to this day. And I mean, he taught me, he had 7 kids too. So he taught me how to be a parent. Wow. I learned so much from that guy. And having that experience was phenomenal because when I transitioned away from operating, I wouldn't work with a gun anymore. I I said, you know what? I'm starting over. I'm a new guy again.
Mm.
I could come out and say, oh, Navy SEAL, this and that, like, bow before me, world. You know, there's some arrogant people out there. And I knew better. I was like, dude, I'm about to make a lot of mistakes. This is going to be rough. The game has changed.
Right.
And I knew that I was a new guy again. And I started reaching out for mentors. And by surrounding myself with people who had gone before me and learned these lessons and could teach me how to translate my message, could teach me how to operate on a day-to-day basis, how to be less offensive.
Right.
You know, the military were super vulgar. You know,
Right.
I had that Navy mouth, man. So,
Yeah.
you know, he taught me how to look for mentorship moving forward. He also taught me the value of being a mentor for others. So I firmly believe that no matter where you are in your professional pipeline, no matter how young or old, it's our responsibility to find a mentor and to be a mentor simultaneously.
Right.
And that's something that we definitely have in the SEAL teams. But I've seen my 7-year-old daughter do that with my 5-year-old son.
Right.
It just doesn't matter how developed you are. You know something someone else doesn't know. I've never, even now, I've never been in a room where everybody in that room didn't know more about something than me.
Right.
It might be welding. You know, it could be something that I just haven't, you know, I'm not a welder yet. So, you know, it doesn't matter. There's so much.
Nick's just changed his entire career now.
And you got to learn to see it. What?
You just changed your entire career. This live stream has done something to him. He's leaving his other businesses behind.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex.
I see. I'm good for something. You know. I do have my skills. I think that being in a room with other people smarter than you, I think definitely has its benefits. So when you're talking about, you know, you're saying, oh, my height, I'm not the tallest person. Just for preference, I'm pretty tall, and I'm used to. I don't really think about height much. But my brother is like 6'5", so he has to duck to get through doorways. So he's like on the opposite side of the scale where everyone kind of looks at him all the time. But when I was young, I used to always think, oh, I want to be that tall. But now I changed my mind because I see that guy's just too tall. But it's funny saying about being in the smartest, being in the room with people smarter than you, because so you have the short thing, and I think that's played something on your mind. I had my age against me, so I still kind of have my age against me. So I'm always surrounded by a lot of wealthy people now because of where I've moved and the people that I communicate with, but I'm surrounded with a lot of millionaires and billionaires, and for me, I always feel weird because they're always so much older than me, and I feel like I'm trying to compete, but with people that are way above me, and I enjoy that chase, and some people don't realize that. So some people say to me like, oh, Alex, you're doing really great, you're doing well, you're doing fantastic, and I'm like, no, I'm not, because you should see what these guys are doing. You know, what they're doing is amazing. So I'm curious, when you're putting yourself in that position, do you find, is it that competitive side of you? Because for me, I feel it's like a competitive thing. Like I want it personally, but I feel it's competitive too. Do you feel that it's a competitive thing, or it's just like you want to do better as a person and it's not really competitive? It's like, it's just something that you want.
I think both those are true because you're competing with yourself in the second scenario.
Right.
Being competitive against other people is good, and even if they're on your team, you should be trying to outperform them. You know, anytime. If you have a monopoly in the marketplace, it's not going to perform as good as it could if you had competitors in the marketplace.
Right.
Competition drives a better product, and I think that's true, and it's something that we should admire about each other. I remember, you know, one of the guys I've already talked about. They're like brothers to me, but one of the guys growing up with, you know, we would go on a run together, and he might kick it up a little bit so that he could be like 1 foot in front of me.
Right.
And then I would kick it up a little bit and be like 1 foot in front of him, you know, going back and forth. And by the end of it, we're in a dead sprint, like, trying to push each other over, you know. Like, you know, it's awesome. And had I been jogging alone in that moment, it might be a nice, steady, you know, listening to a podcast, just cruising. You do it with one of your boys and it turns into an all-out sprint. Well, you're going to get faster. It's a better workout. You're burning more calories. And that competition is something that we need to integrate into our lives. But I'll admit, the person I compete with the most is definitely myself.
Right.
there's multiple times where I'll go through a scenario, whatever it is. Say it's a sales call or something like that.
Right.
Trying to win a client. And at the end of it, I'll make a note, lessons learned. Like, here's the things that I could have done better.
Oh my God.
Regardless of the outcome, how can I improve my process, right?
And
I get sick to my stomach when I look at things that I should have known better. I should have done this. Like I said, even if it's a positive outcome.
This is so crazy.
No one is a tougher critic on myself than myself.
Nick, I am very curious. Okay, I need to know where you learned that. Did you learn that at Harvard, or did you learn that from mentors, or did you learn that yourself? And the reason I say that is because that's something that I personally do. Every morning I write goals, and every evening I write what I could have done better and how I'm going to improve tomorrow and how I'm going to ensure that I don't make the same mistakes, and how that's an OCD thing of mine, and I do that every day. And again, I found that other high performance people do the exact same thing. So I want to know where you learned that.
I think I was arriving at the conclusion on my own. So when you do that, when it comes from observation, from experience, like you said, that Russian quote, I love that. It really sinks in, and it's there. But then when you have that validated through training pipelines or like you said, high level institutions, it tends to sink in. And it's nice to have that validation sometimes, not that I needed it. But what happened was I had noticed it, and then when I got into a platoon, I realized that they had made it a process. So after anything, you have this after actions, right? And you put together, you build a lessons learned binder, and you keep that with the platoon throughout the entire platoon. Hey, next time we're doing this movement, we got to make sure to bring chem lights, even like simple stuff like that,
right?
Let alone tactics and stuff. And it continually evolves through that lessons learned binder. So it's something that was written into my process when I was in the military.
Right.
And then when I got out, I went through several degree programs, but at Harvard, they really taught me how to standardize that process. And they gave me a couple tools that made it click. It took it out of my mind and put it into practice. So, at this point, I've just seen it phrased from multiple angles, and that's it's a belief. This is something that's just true.
Yeah, for sure. And another thing I'm curious about as well is, so obviously you ended up going to Harvard, which still blows my mind that you decided to do that. I don't. It's kind of crazy. So I wanna. Obviously, you're a dropout, right? So you went to high school. You went, I'm done with this, and then later on in life, you just randomly turn around and went, you know what? I'm gonna go to Harvard. I want to know, what is the difference? Like, what do you feel was the difference between? Obviously, I know there's a difference because it's high school and university, so obviously there's going to be a clear difference. But I mean, educational standards wise, did you feel a difference between being at a high school and being at Harvard? Like, could you feel? Obviously, I'm guessing you were going to be with other people as well that have come from, they've finished high school and then they've gone to Harvard. So what was it? What was that environment like?
Right. So I did finish high school, but I did it with like a 2 point something GPA.
Oh, okay.
It was horrible. And then I went to college and dropped out of undergrad. So, the person I was before the military was a charismatic, loving, passionate person.
Right.
But I had no direction and no discipline. After going through boot camp,
right,
where you're getting ready to move on, but they back it down to where they'll teach you how to fold a towel. And here's exactly how you fold a towel. Here's exactly how you make your bed. Right. And it's standardized. And the reason they do that is you have to be able to handle a towel before you can handle a gun.
Right.
Start small. The way that you handle the small things is the way that you're going to handle anything. And it put this discipline into my life. And then you carry that over to what's considered, one of the toughest military trainings in the world in BUDS. And I saw the value of being disciplined and being consistent. And it changed me. It made me a better product. That's one reason I wrote the book, because I'm trying to tell people, hey, I know you can't go through boot camp, but here's some structure that you can add into your life to make you a high performer. Here are some critical elements that you may just not know yet. So, to empower people and give them those tools. After I gained that discipline, I started seeing the value in knowledge. And, it's funny. When I got out of the military, one thing I did on LinkedIn was I reached out to a bunch of CEOs and high-level people in the Bay Area, in San Francisco. And I connected with them, and I told them, hey, I'm not going to ask you for anything except for knowledge, but I need a lot of it. And I composed a really nice message. And as a result of that, I was able to book every meal, 3 meals a day with some of these people for like a 4-day stretch. And I drove up north to San Francisco and filled that time. And I stayed true to my word. I never asked them for a job or for anything else. But I would make lists of questions I wanted to ask them, and then I would take notes as they were speaking, which made them feel great. That's,
of course.
It appeals to their ego and to the intangible side. Most older people who have dominated business start looking for ways to mentor people and pay that along, and they get tremendous value from that beyond the monetary and intangible value. So I felt like it was a good thing to provide that for them, and they just give knowledge away for free, man. I mean, it's amazing how you can just ask questions and people just tell you the secret, and what you can do with that knowledge is incredible. And I saw that, so that's why I went to business school. I was like, okay, well, maybe I should learn from these people, and it became intoxicating. I went to 2 different business schools, right? One of them being Harvard, because I wanted to go to the what's considered, one of the more challenging programs and prestigious institutions. And I mean, the branding of Harvard is incredible.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I wanted to see if I could cut the mustard. Now, I had a moment just like Hell Week, just like Tuesday night of Hell Week, where I was at Harvard and I was looking around. I was like, okay, so this is what smart looks like. Pretty humbling,
Right.
And it was a lot of fun. And you're in lectures, and they'll give you cold calls and on a case that you've read and discussed with your peers, and then ask you what you would do to solve the problem.
Right.
So you're not just like, hey, I'm going to prove that I read the case or I've read the case. They want to move on. So, hey, so what would you do? You're this guy. What would you do? And they'll even put people in the classroom in different roles within the case and let you argue about what the right answer is. Oh, man, it was incredible.
Yeah.
But it was intimidating, at first. I was really intimidated and almost afraid to share my opinion. Towards a few weeks into the program, I had a few friends of mine that I had made through the program come up to me and tell me, like, hey, are you welcome back, man? We really want to see what you got.
Right.
And that challenge kind of, it hit that competition vein that I have. And so I stepped up and started sharing my ideas. And again, it was validating. It was a lot of fun, but I realized that I could hang. I was in the right room.
Right.
And I didn't know until I started speaking up. And, one thing that's important to remember, this kind of off topic, but, speaking up early is important. If you're in a group and you set the social norm that you're going to sit there and listen, it's going to be harder to break that. If the longer you let that go, the harder it's going to be to break.
Right.
But if you show up even to the boardroom or a meeting and just make sure you say something early on and you establish that, your brain goes into that mode and then you'll start chiming in more often. It's just a little trick. It's important to do that. And I'm not saying to be that guy at the meeting who, before we get off the phone, everybody feels like they have to say their 2 cents because
I know those ones.
Knows they haven't said anything yet.
Yeah.
And I can't stand those people. Turning a 45-minute call into a 2-hour call.
Yeah.
I just mean something little up front, even if it's a salutation or a joke, an icebreaker, something like that. You're going to perform better in that meeting. That's just a group dynamic thing. And I had to break that after I had established that I was going to be one of the more quieter members. So it was fun. I love how you never stop being challenged. At that point, I had accomplished some amazing things, and I found myself intimidated and scared to speak. It's funny.
Yeah,
Nobody's above it.
Yeah, it's funny you come from.
It was a good moment for me.
You're a Navy SEAL, you go to Harvard, and then you're intimidated by the people talking. So here's what I kind of want to do. Obviously, we're coming towards the end, but what I want to do. So obviously, one of the things that I love is the fact that you did sit down and you did speak with these CEOs, because I want to get that clear to everyone. You sat down on LinkedIn, you found these people, and then you said, I don't want anything. I don't want a job. I just want to learn from you. And then you book all these meetings with them. You sit down, like, firstly, who were they and what kind of questions were you asking them and what did you learn?
Yeah, I looked for a wide array of people. I think that, if anybody who invests their money knows that you need diversification in your portfolio for it to stand the test of time.
Right,
If you put all of your money into bonds with a low yield, well, you're not accepting any risk, which is a good thing, but you're not going to get rich either.
right,
If you put it all into young startup rocket ships, you might lose everything. In fact, it's probable, but the upside is tremendous. So what you want to do is you want to balance that portfolio. So there's enough risk to have a high return, but you're not gonna lose it all. And I think we should do the same in our relationships. So I would look for people with different worldviews, people who would challenge me. Even as I furthered some of those relationships, the people who didn't mind disagreeing with me, or I had one person, I did a post on LinkedIn, and he texted me and said, "Hey, I just want you to know you misspelled this word, second paragraph down, third word over, and I know how you are, and that you would appreciate knowing that." That's someone that I added to my personal board of advisors.
right.
That's someone who I was like, check you. I want you around.
Yeah,
Because a lot of people are going to be yes men and smiling faces. I don't need that in my life. I
yeah,
don't
for
want to be
sure.
right. I want to be better. So he didn't mind providing that dissent. So I welcome dissent, and someone who doesn't mind speaking up has tremendous value for me. In a world where we tend to surround ourselves with like-minded people, we live in silos, echo chambers,
Right,
all
yeah.
these terms. It's just about welcoming the conversation and growing. So those are the people that I stuck with. But I mean, I talked to one of them was a life coach. I'm still not sure what a life coach does, but
Yes.
she
Hey,
was
listen,
phenomenal.
we're not gonna
She
discuss
taught me how
that.
to rephrase things.
We're not gonna discuss life coaches on here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a good thing for me in that moment. It was great, man. She helped me out quite a bit
Yeah.
and taught me how to frame messages better. And yeah, it was a really good deal. And then some of them were CEOs. There was a tech startup guy who left. I don't want to. I'm not a name dropper,
No, no, of
but
course.
left a firm and then used his capital to start up another one. And I learned a tremendous amount from him. And then I carried that along. That went so well that I did it again in the Bay Area
Right.
and did the entire format again and went up there. And anyone who welcomes the sharing of knowledge and who has accomplished a little bit more than you, or more in a different direction, and is going to see things that you don't see,
Mm.
are the people that you should try to surround yourself with.
I like that.
There's three categories at all times. Like anything you're doing, there's things that there's things that you don't know, and then there's things that you don't even know you don't know yet because you haven't done it.
Yeah, yeah,
And that category is what's going to get you. That's what's going to get you.
yeah.
And that's where mentorship comes from. That's where having a personal board of advisors in your life is going to illuminate that column, and because that's the learning curve
Yeah.
column, and you want to shed light on that.
I think it's yeah. So again, I don't know if you're familiar with this person, but there's a guy called Ty Lopez. He actually did the same thing. He did it, I don't know, like 10 years ago or whatever, but he actually did the same format that you did where he just reached out. I mean, there wasn't LinkedIn back then, so I don't know exactly how he did it, but he managed to find these CEOs and he did the same thing. He basically traveled. He lived with the Amish for some period of time and stuff. And yeah, then he went off and made like $100 million doing his thing, and I was just like, damn. And I've seen it as a common thing. Me personally, so I never reached out to like CEOs, but I did get mentors. So what I ended up doing was I kind of just started talking to people, and then they would tell me stuff, and then after learning and building my own stuff and then making money, then I moved to a prominent area, and then I just started talking to everyone and asking them like, oh, obviously not trying to make it so direct that I'm not trying to be annoying, but I'm just trying to coach it out and just kind of trying to figure out, right, what are you doing? How are you doing it? And then everyone slowly figured like, okay, he's young, he's trying to figure it out. And then they just sit and talk to me, which is like, it does the world of good. But I think you're right. Mentorship is critical. Like it's been a huge part of my life, and I definitely wouldn't be here without it.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I think it is a common thread. Now, I haven't made $100 million or whatever he made, but
No, not many people have.
yeah, it's a good deal.
Not
Yeah, not many
every
people have.
not everyone's
It's
made
a good
100
deal. I
mil.
mean, from yeah, exactly. Um, as a father, as a husband, as a professional, um, as a tennis player on the weekend, there's no limits
Right, right.
to where you can grow by surrounding yourself with people that are better at it than you.
No, for
If you
sure.
find yourself the smartest, most talented person in the room, it's probably the wrong room.
Yeah,
It's
for
probably the
sure.
wrong room. You want to continue growing. I mean, consistent improvement. One thing that I used to teach quite a bit because it was big in our community, and then it was validated by a book called Legacy, which was about the All Blacks
Right.
in New Zealand, and the culture that they had created was. Well, actually, no. I think the person who came up with it was from the UK, a cycling coach.
Okay.
And the idea is the aggregation of marginal gains is
Right, right.
way to say it, but that you should break your life down into multiple segments and then try to improve by 1% in
Yeah.
every segment every day. And then what that looks like over time. So there's smaller attainable goals. You're not saying, hey, I want to make $100 million. Instead, you're saying, I want to increase revenue by this percentage today, or I need to win a sales call, or I need to improve something with the market, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Break it down and just try to improve by 1%. And over time, you're not going to become discouraged. You're not going to burn out, and your returns are going to go up dramatically,
Yeah.
kind of like a retirement account over time. In no way is that an original concept. Not only that, but
No,
it
but
was really common.
I think it's an important thing.
I say it as much as I can.
No, I think it's really important because it's weird. I've had conversations with people where they'll say to me, oh, I don't want to do that because that's not going to make, like, I want to be a billionaire. So I don't want to do that. It's not good enough. And I'm like, bro, you don't even make 20K yet. Like, let's chill. Let's let's rewind a little bit. Let's lower that pride and that ego. Like, just go for the 10K first, then hit 100, and then we can go from there, But some people, they just, I don't know what it is, but they don't see that progression. They just see the end result. They want the end result today, but they don't want to do the work.
Right. I mean, I think Bill George said it in the book, Finding Your True North, phenomenal book.
Right.
He said that, becoming a CEO tomorrow for someone who is lower level in the company today is kind of akin to someone who's never worked out the bench press and then wants to jump under 300 pounds.
Yeah.
What do you think's going to happen to the guy?
Yeah,
He's
of course.
not going to stand under the pressure. You have to start with maybe 100 pounds and then increase your reps and build up to being strong enough to handle 300 pounds. And you have to set smaller, more attainable goals if you're ever going to get there. If you try to go too big, too fast, when you set these goals that are hard to attain, otherworldly, you're probably going to get discouraged, burn out, and quit. Or you're not going to have a good path to get there and you're going to waste time. Even if you do pull it off, you look back and say, I could have been more efficient with this.
Right.
So the planning phase, like mission planning, is as important as the mission.
No, for sure.
You need a good plan. You need to know what you're going to do, and then you need to also know that plan's probably not going to work out.
Yeah.
What was that movie, Way of the Gun? A plan is a list of things that probably aren't going to happen. So you have to have contingencies built into the plan. If this, then that.
Yeah.
If this doesn't work, then we can flex to this. We can go with this option, and then contingencies built into those.
Mm.
That's what a good plan looks like. That's a plan that's going to stand the test of time. People say the word goal setting. It's kind of played out. It makes me throw up a little bit in my mouth for some reason, but it's something that we need to do. We need to set small, attainable goals that we can stick with, that are going to stand the test of time, and develop an identity that's not wrapped up in success, an identity that's not wrapped up in some benchmark or some number that's all of a sudden going to make you a valuable human being.
We can disagree there. We can disagree there, Nick.
Rooted. What?
We can disagree on that one. Everything that you do needs to revolve around numbers. No, I'm kidding.
Well, I mean, numbers are good, right? But they need to be attainable numbers.
Yeah, for sure.
And the identity issue is what we're talking about there. Like, my identity isn't rooted in being this or being that. I'm not a success or a failure. I'm kind of quoting Carol Dweck,
Right.
Mindset, the New Psychology of Success, right?
Right.
She talks about the fixed mindset and then the growth mindset. And
Yes.
the growth mindset is rooted in becoming better, not being right.
Yeah.
And that's something that we need to take to the battle space, right?
Yeah.
Like
For
my
sure.
identity is built around finding new ways to do things, right?
Right.
Not doing this thing.
Yeah.
And that's going to help you become an innovator. That's going to help you move into uncleared space.
Yeah.
So,
For sure. So
yeah, benchmarking is important, and be rational, be easy on yourself, be kind.
yeah.
Set yourself goals that you can stick to, so that you don't break your mental contracts, so that you're true to yourself.
So okay. So here's just a few final questions that I know if I don't ask, everyone's gonna bug me. One of the is, what's the craziest thing you've ever done? It doesn't need to be a long answer.
Yeah, yeah. The craziest thing that I've ever done that I can say publicly without being like a bad
Without us
example.
having to delete the whole video.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, I did some stupid stuff growing up. I think freehand rock climbing on sandstone in the mountains of Arizona
Yeah, of
was
course you
utterly
did.
ridiculous. That's something that I would never do nowadays. Nowadays, I know how to run ropes and stuff, but at the time, I didn't. So we would go out in the sweltering heat, rattlesnakes everywhere, and just like head up mountains. And I can't recommend that anyone do that. And I
No.
can't believe that we all, made it out of that situation. So, there's nothing wrong with jumping out of an airplane. There's a lot wrong with not bringing a parachute. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with rock climbing. There's a lot wrong with not having someone on belay. It's the way that we do things. I haven't had to prove myself in a long time.
Yeah.
I constantly prove myself to myself, but when you meet guys who maybe weren't successful in a training like Bud's, or
Right.
never got the chance, sometimes they'll want to escalate. Well, here's a good example. I had a friend of mine over the other night, and I love Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I love combat sports, and
Right.
I was showing him a few things, and he got really excited. He was like, "Dude, let's work takedowns and this and that." Well, we were on cement,
Yeah,
and he was excited.
that's a good idea.
Himself, And I told him, I was like, "Listen, I'm too old. I've had a back surgery. We're not doing that without mats, man.
Yeah.
I'll roll with you on the ground." But it's amazing how when you meet someone who's a little bit more experienced in jiu-jitsu, your odds of getting injured
It's lower.
are very low.
Yeah.
If you wrestle with somebody who is less experienced and has a lot to prove, the odds of it going poorly is kind of a bad deal, right? So
Yeah.
you don't want to try to prove yourself in a way that's going to harm yourself. There's ways to do it with safety nets, and I think that's really important. That's one of those lessons that I understand now at 37 that I understand at 17.
It's funny you say that. My grandfather he was a world-class jiu-jitsu person back in the day, and he still does all that stuff.
Nice.
But I like, the thing that I find really interesting is the way that they think and the way that they move. I just find fascinating, and you have to see it. If you're watching this or you're listening to this right now, just go don't look at like a beginning person. Just go watch. Actually, you have to kind of do both sides of it, actually, because you can't really just watch an expert, because you won't really appreciate how difficult it is what they're doing. You kind of have to watch someone new trying to do it. You have to watch the training. That's what I'm trying to get at. If you look at the training and then you watch an expert doing it, it's like, damn. Because I used to, when you watch like MMA or something, you think, oh, it's not that hard. He's just like hugging him and bringing him to the ground. And then you watch an expert talking about it and explaining how their legs are moving and the body weight. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if I could do that.
It's so funny how, you watch MMA, UFC, and you want the guys to stand up and knock each other around a little bit. It's so much fun to watch. But if you have that background knowledge in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, man, it's amazing to look at someone's takedown defense.
Yeah.
Or how they pass the guard. It's amazing how they'll set stuff up, because they're playing chess.
Yeah,
they're not playing
for sure.
checkers. They're not thinking the next move; they're thinking three moves ahead, and it's so much fun to watch once you have a little bit of exposure. What I would recommend is people actually go to a beginner's class and just have fun with it. Don't be hard on yourself. Know you're gonna get worked,
Yeah.
you know, but your appreciation for the sport just goes through the roof once you've had that experience.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's yeah, I've always kind of wanted to kind of go into that kind of route just because I've got a lot of friends that are involved in it and I'm a big fan. Like I enjoy watching it. And then I look at my size and I go, do you know what? I'm not built for that. I'm gonna stick to what I'm good at. I'm not gonna play over there. So here's one thing that I wanted to ask as well, and again, it's a question from the fans. Have you played Call of Duty? I know this is. By the way, just for anyone else that's listening, I didn't come up with this question. This is a question asked by the fans. I'm asking what you guys wanted me to ask. Okay. Have you played Call of Duty, and what are your opinions on the game?
I haven't played Call of Duty in a couple versions.
Okay.
So, yeah, I used to play. I liked it because it had a long single player campaign,
Right.
which I always appreciate. Battlefield's gone a different direction. It's a lot of fun, but with all the in-app purchases and stuff, it's like, how do you keep up?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't
The
play.
games are fun. I like first-person shooters.
So I don't play video games at all, and I haven't for many many years. But I have looked at people playing the new Call of Duty, and then I've got a little one, and she likes Fortnite. I don't. It's another video game, and she was asking. She said, "Let's download it. Let's have a try it." But it's all online, so it's not offline. You're playing against real people, and these real people have been playing it for too long. So it's not fun because I'm just constantly being destroyed by 6-year-olds
Exactly.
who have microphones, and they'll tell me how bad I am. And I don't need a 6-year-old cursing me out online. It's just not fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds somewhat toxic. Well,
Yeah.
it's funny that you say that because when I was in platoons, we would all play against each other, and I think that those were my video gaming days when
Right.
you have downtime and everybody's hooked up playing Halo and stuff like
Yeah,
that. It's
that's
so much fun.
hilarious.
Now you can still have that environment online, but most of my friends are pretty active and working. So
Yeah.
I do have a game actually that I'll play with my cousin, and there's a couple other guys that I'll jump on there, which is Forza. Forza 4
Forza.
is worth
Okay.
playing, man. It's a lot of fun. It's a racing game.
Right. Okay. I
But
I
I
don't
don't have a whole
play.
lot of time, but when I do,
All right. So basically, everyone's now going to be trying to find like your Xbox name or your PlayStation name, trying to figure out how to play this guy on the racing games. One last thing
they're
before
gonna
we
beat me.
well, yeah, again, people online, it can swing either way. So yeah, just before we jump, I just wanted to say, is there anything that I haven't spoken about or I haven't asked that you want to bring up now? Obviously, we're going to talk about the book, but is there anything that you want to talk about or mention before we jump?
Yeah, I think my story to tell. One thing that I'm really passionate about is not puffing up some image. A lot of people, we call them chest pounders. They want to talk about how great they are and I have the answer and this and that. And there's different strokes for different folks. But I think that a viewpoint, like an inside look, is a good deal.
Right.
And I think that's what people really need. So what I've tried to do, with the book and then with my messages when I speak, is really highlight the failure piece. And I know that it's fail forward, all these memes and stuff. It's a
Right.
popular thing, but I just need people to know that it's true. If you look at my resume looks pretty awesome. I mean, you're talking Navy SEAL, cum laude in undergrad. You're talking Harvard Business School, consultant for multiple NFL teams, basketball teams, corporations, and published book. And that's just at 37. So who knows where it's going to go. But that's only the half truth. That's not the whole story. And I know myself better than that. There's all this other stuff that happened. I mean, there was playing American football and then not growing and not being able to play that anymore later on in high school and losing something. There was breaking up with girls, or I got cheated on one time. I got to feel what that was like,
That's not fun.
barely making it into the Navy to go the direction I wanted to go, dropping out of college, getting rolled back in training and thinking there's no way I was going to make it. I remember
Right.
talking to my now wife, girlfriend at the time, and saying, hey, we had a good run, but I don't think this. I don't think I can pass the swim times in third
Mm.
phase. I'm
Yeah.
going to do everything I can. I had multiple times, and then I'm contracting in the Middle East, and I get a back injury. I get a smashed disc, my L5S1. I had to get a spinal fusion surgery, so I couldn't work with the gun anymore. I gained weight. I lost my physicality, and a lot of my identity was rooted in that. There's been so many failures, and I've been whipped around so many times between those bullet points on the resume.
Mm.
Here's the lesson. I'm like everyone. Everyone's like that. There's no exceptions. No one just breezes through this thing. They just don't highlight that on their Instagram page, right? You see the highlights. And what's important to remember is that everyone fails between the lines. Everyone fails between the bullet points. The people who are successful crush those failures, learn from those failures, move forward, and establish that bullet point. That's what the goal is, right? Is that bullet point. If you expect that road to be easy or kind to you, I'm sorry, that's just not the universe that we live in.
Yeah.
Nature is brutal, man. Everything in this world is either growing or dying.
Yeah.
There's not a single tree out there that's static. Nothing is static. Everything is growing or dying. Make sure that you're growing towards that next bullet point. If you stop, if you become idle, just know that that's a lie. You're not idle, you're dying.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Keep growing. Keep failing. Put yourself in position to fail and learn those lessons and take good notes, right? That's your lessons learned binder. So I just want people to understand that what you see on the resume with me isn't the whole truth. There's so much more to that story.
Well,
and it could have gone multiple
And
ways.
this is the thing. Everything that you just spoke about, like the surgery, about because obviously I've already read, so I know there's a lot of stuff that was going on, especially with the swim times, with obviously the whole wedding situation. So there's a lot of stuff that we haven't spoken about, but it is in the book. So all you have to do, it's going to be in the link in the description. If you're watching live, you can press it right now. You can pre-order it. It comes out in January. January what?
January 7th.
January 7th. There we go. And then is there...
January 7th. It's available for pre-order now. So
Yeah, so you can pre-order it right now. There's a link already in the description, so you guys can press on that and you can pre-order it. And yeah, Nick, do you want to give a little insight? Obviously, I know that you've already kind of given quite a wee bit away, but do you want to give like a brief summary of what is going to be the thing that they take away from reading this book?
Yeah, from reading this book, you're going to get an accurate representation. It's called Elite, right? And I called it Elite almost as a play on words because the story is, I'm not hiding from the good, the bad, or the ugly in that as far as my personal development. So to become elite you got to get dirty, man. You're going to get tired. You're going to get sweaty. And people are going to understand that if you have a solid structure in your life, if you have processes, you're going to be able to navigate life successfully. So it's not about the outcome, it's about the process. And the book is my effort to help people refine their process so they might turn 10 years that it's going to take to be successful into 2 or 3, just by being more efficient, surrounding yourself with the right people, knowing what to look for. So it's kind of a guide on how to stand the test of time.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, again, guys, make sure to go down right now. There's a link in the description. You can just press on that. You can pre-order it right now. It comes out in January, so you're going to get a notification once it comes through. And if you haven't already, obviously you can look up Nick. Where can they find you on social media? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm Nick Hayes Life on Instagram, and I think I'm the same on Twitter. I don't tweet much. People get in trouble too much on Twitter.
Right.
But yeah, Instagram is at Nick Hayes Life, and then my website is eliteteams.com.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, if you guys want to find out any more about Nick, obviously you're more than welcome. You can find him on social media. Feel free to give him a like, send him some love, and obviously tell him that you come from Entrepreneur News or Entrepreneur Success Podcast. That'd be awesome, so that he knows the ramifications of what we have just done today. So I appreciate you coming on, Nick. I'm going to cut the live stream, but obviously we'll continue chatting in a second.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Alex.
That's all good. All right, let me cut the live.